This
So
conference
application,
will now be recorded.
yeah, the application, if you talking about it, we have like web applications, mobile based applications. Suppose, I mean, just if you understand it, like the Gmail application we are accessing is nothing but there is one kind of the web application which is hosted somewhere, right? Yes, using that internet, like a provider who is providing about us, like the Gmail application, we are accessing this remotely. Yeah, so like through that like internet, whatever like application we're accessing, that all these applications we can call this like as web applications. Like that, we have the different I mean the kinds of this application, like mobile application, within the mobile, like iOS based application, Android based application, like this side internet based application, intranet based applications. Yes, like yeah, so this video is not required, just like close that webcam. Yeah, so these are all the different types of applications which we have this in the market. But all these applications we are accessing is nothing but they have been implemented, right? They have been implemented somewhere hosted. But like all these are all, I mean, in IT industry, if you just observe that all these applications which starts and which work like as a project. Yes, almost all the work, whatever we are doing this in our IT. So there's to complete all these applications, to host it, or to manage it, or to implement it. Like all these, we can call it as project, right? But project-wise, if we just talking about it, project is not going to complete in single day. So let me talk it. I mean, let me take it this one example, and we go for this as per that example application. The how it is going to helpful that like what is the process that will behind this, will try to understand. Suppose just take this. If you need that one application, suppose something like about your own with that name, suppose Rise Ancient Technologies .com is the site is required, which is suppose starting based application. Okay, that's fine. Later we'll talk at that the type of application. But if I would like to host my application, the first I need to start it like who can help us to implement that complete functionality of the application. I need to look at, right? Yes, we need to plan for this. Yes, who are all the providers are providing about it? These, I mean, IT, the applications who are implementing that, or who give the support. First, we need to look at about it, the provider. Suppose if you just think it about it, providers, we have like I mean TCS or Infosys. So the company, I mean the service-based companies, if we just observe that, so their objective is so understanding the client the requirements, and the requirements based application the implementation and supporting that. Yes, like this, the Rise Technologies, the .com, if that application is required, I need to approach that some providers who can help me to implement that application. But implementing that application, if you just observe, that is not the single day activity. Because the once this application is that the application which will be started as a project, and each project in our I mean, in our infra, we have like some specific plan. The first plan is required. Okay, so this is residentialtechnologies.com. So what are the functionalities we have? What are the criticality we have this? So, I mean, what is the demand we have this, or what is the capacity that we're expecting about it? Suppose if you just think about it, you need to prepare one Word document. Word document are like some kind of the suppose yeah, the Word document you are preparing is nothing but you need to have the system, right? Yes, we need to have the laptop, and we need to have the some desktop system, at least some 1 GB of the RAM, or some capacity of the system which is required to process Word, and then we are going to write it thus the complete the documentation. I mean that is whatever the content that is required we can implement. I mean we can write it like that. If you are planning this one application to implement is nothing but as a project which is starting, the project capacity is required, like what is the system capacity is, how many systems that is required, how many number of users they are going to access about it, and Yes, whatever the securities, whatever those networks, and whatever the storages. So just, I mean, if you are non-computers, also don't worry about it. It's like, I mean, we have the hard disks. Yes, like if you are taking this laptop is nothing but first you are thinking about it. What is the storage capacity that is required? What is the processor capacity that is required? Is that like is required? So there are there's the points whenever we are planning this, or whenever we are thinking about it to buy the simple one laptop. Just thinking about it, one application you are going to launch it is nothing but first initially the complete plan and the capacity models that will be so that will be performed. And once the plan is done, that is okay. So this is RiseNTechnologies.com to implement that application. Okay, 1 year is required or 6 months is required, some particular plan. And once this plan has been completed, then which are expecting is implementation. So once it is decided, they come thus in the next phases to start it, that is implementation. Okay, which language is required? Okay, the RiseNTechnologies.com, these are all the courses we have those in these courses. All these courses to purchase it or publish it. Yes, like what is the technology that is required to use it to implement the complete functionality of the application. Okay, so that will be decided some Java program or PHP or Python, or we have those different technologies, and that's developers that comes into the picture and they start working on that implementation point. So once implementation is done, so the next which we are expecting about it, inspecting. Yes, like before releasing to the customer, it is required to evaluate it, right? Evaluation, like there is testing teams comes into the picture. The testing teams, they do that like a complete evaluation of this, that means quality of that the application, and as well as each and every functionality which is implemented, that functionality, is it working or successfully or not. Yeah, inspecting, and finally accepting. If all are good, the testing team, they are accepting this application to move to that live environment. Yes, if you just think about it, one application like RiseNTechnologies.com has started as a project. So suppose vendor is like, let's assume that TCS. TCS has taken the project and they have started implementing that, and which is having this the first initial planning, then execution, that is implementation, then evaluation, that is inspecting by the testing team, different teams. What are the teams? That's I'll come back. Then finally approval. Yes, once it is approval from RiseNT, then it will be hosted that in the live environment, and which can be accessed by the customers. Yeah, so any work which is doing this and which is processing as a project, and project is having that different phases. Yes, this is the word like which we need to remember, that different phases. But who will manage that all these phases? So developer is going to manage it, or who is that? Yes, management team comes into the picture. Yes, whenever the project has been started, approval process has been done, the initialization of the process, the management team, one project manager will be assigned, and who are going to evaluate all these phases, right? Who is going to manage all these phases? Yes, like the manager comes into the picture and he uses that some methodologies and some tools to handle this, the complete project life cycles. Yeah, the keyword, what is the keyword we are mentioning? Project is having that any work which you are doing this in the organization, that is as a project, and the project is having that life cycle, and all those life cycles which will be managed by management team. And but management team, they are going to use it some methodologies and tools to handle that all these life cycles. The teams they need to handle that. But final objective of this, the management team, is delivering that work, whatever they have committed, on time and on budget. That means whatever the plan this we have the 6 months or the 1 year. So within that 1 year, so on time delivering this the functionality. So whatever the initially which they have had it, so on time delivery, and as that on budget. That means what are the cost which they have planned it is with that cost, and on time is the objective. Yes, if you just observe this like objective, what do you have this in The project is the project, which is behind the life cycles. That life cycles managed by the management team, and management team they use that some methodologies. And with all these methodologies, objective of this the methodology is on-time delivery with a on budget. Okay, so this is objective. But okay, so this process and this objective to achieve that. So what about this last 30 years of the market, and what about this last 5 years or 6 years of onwards? That's how that the process has been changed. Yes, we'll try to understand some differences. So from like applications like a distributed architecture, which has been started around 1995 onwards, the last 20-25 years, how was the market or how they were using the process? And from the last the 5 years or the 6 years onwards, how the process has been changed. We'll try to understand the difference. Yeah, so like before understanding this, all this, like let's maybe we have this the most frequently we hear about this word, that is SDLC. So software development life cycle. As whatever we discussed, so that is everything as a life cycle which goes that. We have like a waterfall approach. So maybe if you have gone through this about our academic career, so the computer's background, we have like SDLC. So is that one of the software engineering which contains about the complete life cycle. Yeah, so in that SDLC, the first and I mean, if you just observe the all the phases waterfall approach, the first requirements gathering. Yeah, so in each phase, just let's understand which team is involved in that. That is important. So requirements gathering first. Okay, the TCS team, they are coming to that like a registration and they are going to collect that. First, let me know that what are the requirements. That's we have that. Yeah, the first, that is the phase. But which team is going to work it from the TCS team? Is it development team is coming into the picture, or is it a testing team, or is it somewhat? Which team? Yeah, the business analyst which comes into the picture, who are like the specific to that, the domain specific or the functionality teams, they comes into the picture. They go to the clients and they collect that all the information which is required to implement that functionality of the application. Yeah, this is the first phase. Once this phase has been completed, now what next? Yeah, the requirements team. So they do that like some specific duration, the duration like 1 month or 1.5 months on the basis of this, the plan. So they analyze it to the complete functionality and they prepare the documentation. Okay, so the analyst team work is done. But that input, the requirements inputs which will be taken and which starts by that, the next team, once this requirements is completed, octaves are coming to the picture. Yeah, what about this octaves team's role? They do that analyzing the complete okay capacity point of view, demand point of view, the users point of view. So they analyze that. As we are saying about simple to buy that one laptop, we think about it. What is the storage that is required? What is the process that is required? What is the like a RAM is required? So many the points we'll consider, right? Like that. So if they are planning about it to set up this the complete application related infra, so the octaves come into the picture and they design that. Yes, like where this complete data center can be set up that for this application. That means they need to have this one the physical location where they can set up the complete networks, storages, as well as like computers. That is virtual machine or whatever. We'll come back to those points. So they decide that all these points, and then what is the storage of that, the systems, and all this the capacity which they plan it, and the octaves come into the picture and they give us some inputs on that. That is infra level. Here I am the point. What is the point we have is infrastructure. Okay, the one says that infrastructure is designed by this octet, that is infra octet. But like we need to have this application also, right? Application implementation also. Infra is not enough. Suppose we bought that the laptop is not enough, but a Word document, I need to have the Microsoft software also, right? like that. So once this infra is ready for about our application, but application has to be implemented with which technology, that is a Python or Java, and what is the server is required, the server's point of view, the database point of view, that's complete another level. That's the conclusions required. That is another octaves come into the picture. That is application octaves. Yeah, so once requirements have been completed, two teams are coming to the picture. One is who are going to give the complete analysis of that, the infra. And once infra is ready, but that application also has to be implemented, the servers and the databases. So that is that design of that application. Yeah, so that is another team, that is octaves are coming to the picture. That is, they are going to decide about that complete functionality of application. How do we implement it? There are the two teams are coming to the picture, and they decide about this, the complete the analysis of that and the designing of this application. Okay, when this phase has been completed, but it is going to take it this some time in this team, and they are going to complete that their task. Once these phases have been completed, so here which teams are coming to the picture? Octets. The first above one is requirements teams, that is the functionality teams. Yeah, once these phases have been completed, but now it has to come into that implementation, right? The next phase is implementation. So on the base of these inputs, like a system point of view, that is infra point of view, and application architecture point of view. So once these phases have been completed, then the next team who is coming, this is implementation team. But the two teams we need to remember that in this implementation. One is infra, who are going to set up that infrastructure team, and as well as the program design point of view, that's application to implement it or application functionality to implement it. The program design point of view, the developers are coming to the picture. Suppose if the program is Java developers. If the program is Python developers. And if that infra, suppose Windows infra is required, yes, Windows administrators, network administrators, we need to have the setting up that all the things, right? Storage administrators, database administrators. So some infra team who can set up that, the complete in the data center, that teams comes into the picture. And as well as like implementation teams also come into the picture. Yeah, that is which we can say that implementation phase. But are you going to have this the only one the infrastructure or one environment? So no. So here the first developers, they are going to start working on it. So to implement the functionality, they need to have the separate system, a separate infra, separate environment. Yeah, the next what we are having this is, that is implementation. Two teams are coming to the picture. So first, who can set up that infra, that which we can call it as administrators or operations engineers. So who are coming to the picture, and they are going to set up this the complete infra which is required for the development team. And then once this the infra is ready, developer, they start working on that, the implementation as per that program design. Yes, once this phase has been completed, yes, it is going to have some specific duration. And once this phase has been completed, next phase which are expecting about it, some testing phases. Yes, what are the code which has been implemented by the developer? Developer itself has to test it before giving this to the testing team, his functionality, whatever he has implemented. And as well as integration, that means the testing teams also come into the picture, who are going to evaluate the complete functionality, whatever it is implemented by the developers. Yes, some testing models that is required on the basis of the client specification, like integration testing or like staging environment, or like a QA environment. So different the types of the testing on the basis of the functionality testing, non-functionality testing. So that is the different testing models that will be included here, which will be performed by testing team. If you just observe this, once again the phases, requirements will be done by BA. Infrastructure analyzation will be done by the infra architects, and program level complete functionality will be designed by the octets like application octet, and then infra which will be set up by this administrator, and that infra which will be used by in the development developers. And then once this development environment has been completed, then testing environment. But the testing environment, again, separate infra is required, separate systems required, and that will be set up by that system administrator. But that infra which will be used by testing teams. Just understand, I mean, the teams are dependencies. So the process is very, very important. As a DevOps, whenever we talk about, yes, DevOps is not that the tool. So how much you are good with this, the process, understanding teams dependencies, teams activities, and teams collaboration. So what do we have this in the process? If you have the clarity, then we can understand this. So there's the DevOps, how it is having the solutions. Yeah, the first, this is the requirement, just to have this some attention on this. Yeah, so I'll come back. I mean, so just if you have this any queries, just like 2 minutes, let me complete this process, then we'll discuss that. Yes, integration testing, and once this phase is done, so development separate, then testing like a functional testing or like integration testing, separate systems required, separate servers required, separate storage required, so which will be used by the testing team. So the whatever the test duration, that's how they are going to, yeah, so they are going to do this the complete the evaluation. And once this evaluation is completed, and this testing team, they are going to confirm it. Was okay, the functionality, whatever it is planned in this iteration or in this release, all the functionality is good. Now we can go ahead to the next phase. So once this testing team is confirmed, which will be moved to that somewhat like a next level of the testing, now which we can say this load testing or system testing or performance testing. So there are so what is that point is, suppose if this application is getting used by this 1 lakh users, so 1 lakh users are going to access at the same time, what is the response times of that application, or any failures which are happening this from the infra. So all that like evaluation is required. That is some system testing or like load testing or performance testing. We use that some different terminologies as that the specification point of view. And this here separate tools that will be used to evaluate the complete load of that application. Yes, once these two phases have been completed, then if this is approved, yes, all that like capacity is accepting by that application, then they accept this team, and which will be promoted to the next phase. But what is the next phase that we'll be having that? Yes, now who has given the requirements? So he has to evaluate it, right? So that is now the like, I mean, suppose TCS has given the project to us, like Ryzen team has to evaluate it. Okay, what is the functionality we have given, that all the functionality is it as expected, it is working or not. Yeah, so that is accepting model. That is which we need to test it, and if as expected it is working, then we'll approve that. Once we approve that, then about our application, which will be moved to the next environment, that is live environment. There's a production environment, we'll call it. So which is hosted about this application, which is accepted by the client, and which will be hosted in separate infrastructure, separate the servers. Yes, if you just think about it, one project, which is, I mean, one application which is as in the project, which is having the different life cycles. In that life cycles, different teams, and all these teams coordination, collaboration, and if you have like a coordination, so then whatever it is planned is nothing but, as we are saying about it, the on-time delivery and on budget. Yes, so that is whatever the budget which is a plan. If all these phases, if it is as expected, if it completes on time, and the teams which is planned, and if the teams are able to complete it, then whatever the commit which is given by this the TCS team to us, then they can complete it, right? Yeah, so that's like to achieve that. So we were having some waterfall approaches or this kind of the process models that the management team is using about it. Okay, the requirements PA team, then their inputs take it, and infra teams come into the picture, and they give that, they analyze it, and they prepare some documentation for that infra point of view, and Octets comes into the picture, and that input will be taken, and we start this next phase, that is coding or the implementation phase. There is infra setting up that and the implementation of the code. Then evaluations like and developers level evaluation and like I mean functionality level evaluation, then loading level or the performance of the application level evaluation. And evaluation is not enough, like approvals, and on the basis of the approvals promoting to this next the phase, and like finally getting this approval. Yeah, so getting this approval from that acceptance, that is UAT environment, and finally delivering to production. Yeah, so these are all complete the life cycle phases. That's why have this in our process. Have got the clarity on this? So are you able to follow? Any queries, questions? So is it stuck somewhere?
Hi Venkat, this is Keshav.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, please.
Yeah, can you just, what's the difference between system design and program design?
Yeah, fine. Like, so here, suppose we are hosting this application to the production environment is nothing but like we need to have high availability features, scalability features, as well as load balancing, failovers, how to handle that. So if we just thinking about it, all these considerations, suppose just thinking about it, we are, we have like a e-commerce based application. So e-commerce based application, we don't know that at what time, how many members are going to use it. So it has to handle that, whether there's two users are using or 1 lakh users are using that at the same time, doesn't matter of that. The application has to, the response times will be the same. But if you are going to setting up this kind of the infra, the some design is required. Yes, how many systems that is required to handle that? On an average, okay, 10 systems are required. But if it is a more demand, yes, how many systems it has to extend more? Or if it is a less demand, how many systems as a cost optimization point of view, how many systems that we can use it? In the complete, the storage point of view, the network's capacities point of view. So all this analyzation is required, and which is the octets are coming to the picture. So cloud point of view, the cloud octets which we have, or like on-premises point of view, like infra octets which we have. So on the basis of this, the clouding model or on-premises model, these octets are coming to the picture, and who are giving that complete plan about high availability features and failovers to handle this about our infrastructure with the DRs. Yeah, so that is the system level design, which we can say that. Yeah, Keshav?
Yeah, and the program design is more on the coding,
Yes, exactly.
to decide
That is
which program or which language we
yes,
should use. Okay,
correct.
okay. Fine, that's clear.
Yeah, good. Yeah, anyone having the queries, questions on this? Okay, so good. Once this application, if that is planned, yes, there are the life cycle that's we're expecting. There are the activities. The different teams are working here. But objective, what is, what do we have this challenge? So as we are saying about it, waterfall approach, but using this waterfall approach, so whatever this they are planning about it, on-time delivery, on budget, are they able to reach the goals? That means the management team, they're able to deliver the projects on time delivery and with on budget. Yes, like last 30 years of this projects, if you gather some statistics, or if you just observe some statistics, what it is saying is what we are doing is not working. That means with this waterfall approach, what is the waterfall approach? One after another one. So first this phase, next this phase, next this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. So a lot of dependency on the teams, one by one. The teams dependencies. Suppose just role also, if you just observe that teams role. So here analyst, he is handling his own specific role, and he is going to involve only just in this phase. After that, he is going to move into that another project. Next, like octaves are coming to the picture. So they work for some specific time and they leave the project. Then the developers, so they have the scope only in this implementation phase. And then like application, once it is moved to the testing team, they comes into the picture. And coding, who has implemented the once this application is ready, application is released by operations teams. That means like administrators, we have the middleware administrators who are going to take care of that. Whatever the inputs which is given by the development team, so he takes this all the release notes and he uses that release notes to release that application to that the next environments. So developer, they have the scope only in the development environment. And next environment is which is managing by operation teams and as well as testing teams. Here the testing team, they do that evaluation, but to perform that evaluation, whatever that infra is required, that will be set up by operations teams. Yes, operation teams comes into the picture, and here the client side interaction. That means Ryzen wise, if you just talking about it, RNS is going to play important role, or that's the vendor is going to play important role here. If you just observe that entire process, the different teams and different teams dependencies. But last 30 years of the statistics, what we are doing is not working. So if you just observe some statistics which are collected until to the 2009, almost 24% of the projects which are using this approach, waterfall approaches, so like 24% of that the projects are getting failed, and the challenged projects like 44% of the projects are having the challenge in sense like, okay, they have planned it the 1 year, but maybe it is extended 1 year, 2 months, or the 3 months, so some duration. And as well as succeeded, on time delivery, on project, on budget, delivering this, only 1/3 of the projects are getting succeeded. So 44% of the projects are the challenge, or before, the 24% of projects are getting failed. Like the 2006 or 2004, the statistics are showing about it. Whatever the methodology they are using about it, that methodology is not that much helping that to achieve that 100% of this the goal to reach it. That's in the projects. So if you just observe some statistics, on an average, cost to overrun is 45%. I mean, they are planning that initially, let's assume that like some 100 rupees, but it is extending this 145 rupees. End of the closing the project. Time overrun, which they planned it 1 year, but it is extended this 1 year, 4 months, 6 months, like that. The functionality delivered on an average is only the 67%. So whenever we collect that, these statistics which are helping that, whatever the methodology which we are using about it, that is not helping the management team to achieve that, making the success of the project. Why it is happening that? What is the reason? Yes, mute. Who is that? Like mute, please. Yeah, thank you. Yes, what's happened? If you just observe this, what's happened? Why it's happening? Thus, these delays. Yes, if you just observe this in this process, one of the important thing what you have to say is the client is going to involve this only in the initial, that is the requirements phase, but then he is coming this and he is going to involve this in accepting testing environment, but remaining all the phases, that is like a T-testing is, sorry. So remaining all the phases, that is that's the TCS team is going to take care of that. So initially the client is involved here, then he is coming this before release to the production, he is coming to the picture. Yeah, so this is one of the disadvantage. Client is not the member in the process. That is one disadvantage. And another disadvantage is what you have to say is a lot of dependency between the teams, right? Yes, so each team member he's handle his scope only. Is developer, so if he completes his development phase, then the remaining phases, so he's just like his involvement is not there that much, but if something is happened, yes, it has to go back to this development, and what he has done, it has to be verified, and again coming back to this all the phases. Yes, sometimes it takes additional time. Yeah, the two important points what you have to say is, one point is client is not the member in the process, because he's involved in this waterfall approach only in the initial phase, and then he's coming to that before release to the production, he's coming to the picture. Suppose he has given us one requirement, and that requirement is processed with all these phases, but whenever he's testing this in acceptance testing, but he has identified that that functionality is required to modify. If it is required to modify, then it has to go back once again to this phase, requirements phase, again change that's like what are the impact that's we have this on the system point of view or the functionality point of view, then implement change that the code, then do this once again the test cases, then do that like once again the load testing, then come back and show this to the client. If the change is the small change, okay, immediately they can do that. But if the change which is identified or which is accepted, which is reviewed by the client, is that some time is required, then that time is having the impact on that the release date, right? Yes, it will be extended that. So they have planned it on so and so date, but whenever the change is identified, the change coming to this in all the phases, yes, it takes more time. That time is having that impact on the current release. Yeah, so the changes are identified as the before release. That is one of the like disadvantage in this process. And the team members point of view, like one more important point of view is a different environment. That means Windows systems, they are much comfortable. But like as a security point of view in the production, remaining all the environments which we use it, Linux-based operating systems, some secured operating systems. Suppose in the production environment, high firewalls which will be enabled, high securities which will be configured. But whereas whenever he is implementing the functionality in his development environment, he uses that like Windows environment. So some infra is different. So implementation is done in on one system, and which will be tested on another system. Yeah, so there are some challenges which we have that because of these challenges, yeah, these change point of view, the challenges point of view, whatever it is a planned, that delivering of this application is getting extending that. Yes, if you just observe this, why it is extending is, yes, we have the customers like vendors. Vendors gives us requirements, and requirements which will be reviewed by this development teams and testing teams. Yes, they use these requirements, and developer they implement it, and testers they review these requirements, and on the basis of the requirements, the developers they have implemented the functionality or not, they are going to test it. And another team we are saying about it, operations teams. Yes, the final overview of this the process, if we just to conclude that the customers gives us requirements, and that requirement is the design team which we have definitely, but that on the basis of their input, yes, the developers and the testing team and operation teams are working that. And all these teams coordination is important. Yes, we have those inputs, so on one team the inputs which we have this dependency for another teams. But what do we have this the main thing, main problems is some communication gaps. Yeah, suppose initial customer was discussed with the business analyst team one kind of the requirement, but whenever it is implemented and testing which will be done by this the different team, there's some communication gaps which is having that the impact in the process. Yeah, the total 2 points, just understand it. One is requirements, developers, and testers. Yes, the input, the functionality of that application which will be taken, and that will be used by the development and testing team. If you have those any communication gaps, understanding these requirements, yes, that is having that impact on that delivering the project. If the delivery is impacted, is nothing but budget is impacted. Okay, that is these are the three teams. Second, another point which I have to see is, okay, once requirements is implemented by the development team, if they say that yes, functionality is ready, then that functionality which will be used in testing environments, that is testing teams or load testing or EAT testing, and finally delivering this to the production environment. But who will do that, moving this application development to that staging environment, staging to that UAT environment, UAT to the production is, that is operations teams are helping here. But who are going to work it on this, like staging environment, UAT environment, or the production environment to run this all the test cases? Testing teams are going to work at that. Yeah, so this is which you can call it. The second point is release phase. In this release phase, developers, once they say this, my code is ready, the testing teams are coming to the picture and operation teams are coming to the picture. Yeah, if you have some gaps between these teams during the release process, that could be infra related issues, or that could be functionality related issues, or some the release process wise there's issues, that is going to make it that the project getting delayed, and that is going to have the impact on the budgets. If we just observe this model, two important activities. One is between that requirements team, requirements developers and testing. So how do you overcome this communication gaps between these teams? That is one point. Second point is, okay, once requirement is implemented by the development team, developers, if they say this, their code is ready, some evaluation is required, like unit test cases, static analysis. We have, I mean, I'll come back, like the CI/CD process, we'll call it. We'll come back to that. So developers, testing, and operation teams, these teams, what are the challenges that we have this during the release process? We'll call it as a release process. So how do we overcome these the release process related the challenges during during this release process, which you can say. Yeah, there are the two gaps. How do you overcome that? So that is the next point which we have. How about this point, this concept? Like this is the main input which is required for us. One is how do you overcome the communication gaps between the requirements, developers, and testers. The second point is how do you overcome the communication gaps between the developers, testing team, and operation teams. Developers, like once this functionality is ready, then which comes into the picture, remaining all the phases. That means if he says he's ready, then remaining all the phases. So how do we handle that? This is we can call it as a release process. And before that, like what do you have to say? Requirements understanding by this development team and testing teams. That is one kind of that the process. Yeah, the entire about our project, the process we can conclude into that between the requirements, developers, and testing team. That is one kind of. And second one is once the developer he says his code is ready, the functionality is ready, how you are doing this about our process, release process. Yes, these 2 points of that, what are the solutions we have? Yeah, so last 25 years of the industry, like where it was having the challenges to handle that all these scenarios. Those challenges, how do you overcome that is next one of the process which you have this is Agile. The first point what we are going to talk it is this section. So how do you overcome the gaps between the requirements, developers, and testing team? Because this is the major role, right? So we need to overcome that communication gaps between the client and as well as developers and testers. So before this process, how it was having his client, he is involving here, and he is going to evaluate it in this phase. So he's not involving in remaining all the environments. So but that's the latest approach or latest process, how they have come up this is, why not the client in this process? So I mean, he's also one of the member in the process. So the point is what we have to say is, so the client itself is one of that member in the process. That means every day he has to communicate with us development teams and evaluating that what is the requirement he has given that, and if he's going to test it by end of the day, whatever he has given that work is as expected wise the developers have been implemented or not. If he's going to evaluate it on that day itself, then if you have those any gaps also it will be identified immediately, right? There is no the much impact on this the time is important. Yeah, the time, if they are able to manage it, then the cost and all the things automatically comes into this control. Yeah, so the one of the process which we have this in the current market is Agile. Agile is helping about it to overcome this the communication gaps between that requirements teams and developers and testers. But I mean the phases are the same, but some terminologies are the different and the process model is different. What is the process model that we have the same Agile? If we just understand that, that's like point of view, this Agile process point of view. We don't call that like just some terminology is required for us. So that is as a DevOps engineer. Yes, we are going to yes, as the latest applications and application process model. Agile is that's one of the important process model. We are going to involve in this process model. We should know some terminologies. Yes, what is the point we have is we don't call that requirements here. We call it as user stories. Yeah, user stories. There are like simple statements of the requirements written from the customer's point of view. Yes, like requirements, we call it as user stories. And once user stories have been identified, the complete product, like suppose, just let me talk it at this approach. Yeah, so there are like user stories, like as a requirements, which we can call it as a product, the complete product backlog is a set of user stories. And they plan that like one user story which they plan it, they don't go for those like long durations, that is months, like 3 months, 4 months, that is waterfall approach. No, here they don't use it long durations. So they take that the requirement, suppose in our technologies.com we have that login module. Login module is one functionality, and as well as viewing that courses is another functionality, like buying the course is another functionality. Like that, there are all the different functionalities. All these functionalities we call it as user stories. So all this set of user stories, which we'll call it as a product backlog. So set of all the modules of that application, we'll call it as a product backlog, and which they plan that one backlog as a one sprint. The sprint is like as in our Agile terminology is a small duration, that is 2 weeks or 3 weeks or maximum 4 weeks. They decide about that. Suppose login functionality to implement it, some 2 weeks that is required. That will be started as a one sprint, which is having some specific duration, that is 2 to 4 weeks or whatever, that's the plan which they have. But in that sprint, everyday meetings also which will be having that meetings with the client, you know, what the developer has done and the testing team, I mean whatever the testing that is required, all this will be discussed that's every day in the meetings. Before that, like some specific duration, after that we'll be having the meetings with the client. But nowadays the client itself is a member in the process, and he's going to daily involving that with the teams, that is development teams, like functionalities. So giving that and checking, that's all the inputs. Yeah, everyday meetings and planning for those like small iterations based 2 to 4 weeks, and finally small modules which will be iterated and which will be released. Yeah, so here in this Agile model, what we have to say is identifying that the user stories and planning that as a sprint, which is having some specific duration, that is 2 weeks or the 3 weeks or the 4 weeks, and having the everyday meetings with the client and clarifying that the functionality, and releasing that the small units of that application, and finally the complete product implementation. Yeah, so this kind of that Agile model which has come into the picture with important terminologies. If you just observe that user stories, set of user stories as a product, and each user story which will be defined as a sprint, is like as a fixed length of the work or duration, that is 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 1 week. On the basis of that, the user story, and each sprint is having that planning and as well as a review. That is before starting the team meetings, and once it is completed the sprint, what are like challenges which they have faced it, and what is the best approaches which they can use it for the next iterations. That is the review sessions. Yeah, so this is the model which is having this in the current as like to overcome that communication gaps between the teams, that is which teams like requirements, developers and testers. Yeah, so if you just compare with that waterfall approach and as well as this agile approach, waterfall approach, design it, yes, so there is some specific duration, then specifications, then implement it, then like UAT. In UAT, if you have this any change which is going back to that, again changing the design and coming this all the fixes, then finally releasing to that or launching that application to the customer. So this is a long process and waterfall approach which we have. But whereas if you just come that like agile approach, we don't go plan that everything as a single shot launching to the client. We split it the functionality into multiple stories, and each story on the basis of the priority of that will be decided by the application team. We don't be involved that, but just understand the process. Yeah, what are those user stories which they have planned it, which will be created as a sprint. Sprint is like a one specific duration of this application to implement it. And once the sprint is completed, and it will be immediately launched to the client. Like small the stories which will be planned it and which will be released that as a sprints. But are you going to have this only one sprint? No, multiple sprints will be having that. So that means every on the base of the functionality, every 2 weeks or every 1 week, or like on the base of the release which they have planned, it will be hand the releases to the production, right? Yeah. So here the points, these points just to understand it. What you have to say is client is involving every day, and what are the changes he is suggesting that, and what are the plan that we have that, and more releases we are expecting about it. That means once developer has done, and which will be moved to the like testing environment, testing to the production, there is a more activities we have this release process, somewhat stress on the release process, because it would be everyday releases. It could be like if it is suppose Amazon e-commerce application, if you just observe that every day they have thus the 1400 releases to the production environment. That means live in the live environment, customers are accessing that application, and as well as at the same time we have that like the backend, the updates are happening on that application. But before that waterfall approach, if you just observe that, yes, so long duration, like 1 month or after 1 month or the 2 months will be having the releases to the production. But nowadays, no, as this the competitor of the world on functionality of the application, whenever they plan it, yes, they are planning this to release within this less duration. Yeah, more releases to the production. That is just thinking about that point from this agile approach, and more stress on the teams as well. But how it is happening in this agile, if you just observe that, yes, like agile is having that 459% better than about our methodologies. 459% better than the traditional methodologies. Just think about it. Yeah, so like a cost point of view, schedule point of view, productivity point of view, quality point of view, satisfaction point of view, agile methodology is far better than traditional methodologies. Yeah, so there are some statistics which are helping. Agile is that like best methodology, like to overcome that the communication gaps which you have this between the teams, that is about the requirements, developers and testers. Yes, that's if you just observe that, as we are saying about it, like the teams, the communication gaps, whatever we have that that is between the requirements, developers and testers, and which will be planned a sprint. In the sprint, which work it has to be completed, prioritizing the work, designing the work, implementation of it, and releasing that, and then testing that. Yes, this complete iteration, but one sprint, this complete iteration. Like, are you going to have only one sprint? No, multiple sprints. Multiple sprints, like a developers, different developers are working on different requirements. But in that, the sprint, we have all these activities. Yes, but how it can be handled is Agile has come up with the sprint approaches to handle this, the complete life cycle activities. And this is helping that, especially to overcome the communication gaps between the requirements developers and testing team. But once this is testing is done, but it has to be released, right? A release process point of which teams are coming to the picture. That is developers, testers, and operation teams. But like still we have some communication gaps in the release process. Yes, Agile is helping us to make it that more the interaction with the clients and to overcome the communication gaps between the teams. But what about this? The communication gaps which you have in the developers, testers, and operation teams. So that gaps, how do you overcome this? Is that is the next, like which we have this one more solution is DevOps. Yes, how the DevOps is going to play this important role is DevOps is helping us as to have this better coordination, communication, and collaboration between the teams in the release process, that is developers and testing teams and operation teams. Yes, what about this DevOps and how this DevOps is going to helpful for the infrastructures of the project, like to make it that on-time delivery with on budget. That's we will look at about this tomorrow class. Tomorrow we look at about it, the next agenda point of view, why the DevOps and how it is going to helpful this DevOps. So that's we'll try to understand some points on this DevOps. But today, whatever we are understanding, that's points process understanding, because this is the input. If you don't know this points, like tomorrow, whatever we are going to talk in this DevOps and what is the role you are going to perform this in the DevOps and how it is going to helpful this DevOps, then we cannot understand it. Yeah, so this is a requirement as that's a demo first point of it is a requirement today. And tomorrow we'll go for this, what is exactly the DevOps and what are the different tools are helping that to have better coordination, coordination between this developers, testing teams and operation teams. If you have the clarity on this each teams what they are doing that, then we are going to helpful that all these teams related combining activities. What are those activities? That's we'll conclude it tomorrow.